Welcome back. It's time for a April flag here.
Good morning.
And on today's segment, we are exploring proficiency-based learning. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is it?
So proficiency-based learning is a competency or performance-based learning program. It was adopted into law in Maine in 2012. It requires schools to have a proficiency-based diploma starting with the class of 2017. They use a document called the Common Core to assess student learning and comprehension in multiple areas. And the image that I selected kind of represents how I see the Common Core and the thoughts of many of my teachers. The system is solid and amazing, but it is a lot of information. It's overwhelming. That's why proficiency-based learning is so important. It takes that overwhelming information and then divides it up into a common core of subjects and skills that students can understand. And by the way, that graphic is called a Wordle, and it's all the rage in schools right now.
So in proficiency, if I can even say it, let's just call it PBL, I guess, like in there. Students have skills or performance-based criteria they need to show a clear understanding of. So what does that mean ideally?
So ideally that means that a student would be put in the driver's seat of their own education. This is a system that removes failure as an option. It's not okay for a student anymore not to understand a particular skill. The idea is that they would work at that skill until they achieve a mastery level.
All right, so mastery is a big word. Does that mean a first grader could master 8th grade ELA standards?
Honestly, that's a really good question, and one that a lot of my viewers and our viewers and the audience have asked. Let's be honest, the likelihood of a first grader achieving an 8th grade English language arts lesson is highly improbable, but it's not impossible. But any first grader who could do that, shouldn't that child be in a classroom where if that learning is so advanced that she would have access or exposure to lessons that are better suited for that mastery level? PBL is that at the core. It means just that. This isn't age-appropriate learning. This is developmental appropriate learning. That's an important distinction. Right now in education, we group by age. If you're 6, you're in 1st grade. If you're 13, you're in 8th grade, so on and so forth. But what if that wasn't the case? What if students could be placed in systems that worked on their developmental level, not their age level? And I know it's hard for people to get their heads around this concept. Our system of education is very traditional. It's over 100 years old.
All right, so it is really hard to wrap my thinking around a new approach.
It is.
And so it's not a new concept, though?
But it isn't, and that's a great point. I think a lot of people think that it is. It isn't a new concept. It's actually been working for many, many years quite well. It's just not in a system that many of us make a connection to. I attended the Education to Industry Summit this year held by APP and LEAD, and we had the opportunity to meet a man and hear him speak, Don Savitsky. He spoke about proficiency-based standards, and he made a connection that literally has made the most sense to me of any other connection made.
All right, and then we have on the screen, we had on the screen a Boy Scout badge, the one for wilderness survival?
Yeah, that's right, the wilderness survival badge. Now, here's the thing about that. The Boy Scouts have several little competency-based badges. They are clear and concise. There are 12 that are necessary to get this badge that's on the screen right now. There is no question that if a Boy Scout hits these levels, he is going to achieve this badge. They are not age developmental, they are developmental, period. Eagle Scouts, the highest advancement rate for a scout, doesn't even have an age level. It has a developmental criteria. I've known 12-year-old Eagle Scouts, and I've known 16-year-old Eagle Scouts. It's not a perfect example. There are differences, but it's the best everyday example that I've ever heard.
All right, so unfortunately we're running out of time, so we might have to go back over this next week. But do we know what we're doing next week?
So next week we'll finish up a little bit here. There's not much information left. And then we'll move into the Common Core standards. That's what proficiency-based learning is based on, is the Common Core. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the strengths and the weaknesses of PBL, and then we'll talk about the Common Core.
All right, sounds great. Thanks so much for coming.
My pleasure as always.
Same time, same place.
I'll be here.
All right, so let's take a quick look at the forecast.
These are roots together.